Good morning, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group with your Monday morning preview. And just looking at some of the overnight markets first, which is what I normally do. Nikkei actually finished down 1%, which I thought was a little bit surprising. When I went to bed, there's a lot of green in Japan, and you could see it kind of finished right around the lows of the session. So it's kind of interesting from where I went to bed and saw a lot of green in Japan. But Hang Seng was down 1.3%. China finished down 2.9%. That was done much more, but they did announce, China did announce last night that they're cutting the reserve ratio for banks by 50 basis points. That actually climbed up to finish off the lows of the session down close to 3%, but you can see they were down over 4% once they opened the first couple hours. So not that bad, but I think there are some concerns going forward in China. Europe, not a lot going on here in Europe. The DAX seems to be the big mover this morning, down 1%, but nothing too volatile going on in over in Europe this morning. You can see Euro stocks off just a touch. We have been seeing a lot of interesting prints go up in FEZ, EZU. A couple of things to note in terms of ETF flows. Well, not a lot going on in US at all. I just listed sectors on Twitter, and just not a lot of movement in terms of what happened last week. Flows were somewhat muted. Did not see any major buying going into equities last week. So, a lot of that buying, it did, drift prices up further. But however, there wasn't a lot of conviction there. I did not see any major buying going into some of the risk-on sectors. One thing to continue to note, as I mentioned, EZU and FEZ continue to see outflows. They lost about $565 million in assets last week, those particular ETFs. Japan also lost about 600 million. If you remember in 2015, developed markets saw a lot of inflows, pretty much steady inflows. I think investors were looking overseas for some return. Now we're seeing some money come out of those areas, and it's been coming out in pockets. So something to keep an eye on there. What else do we have this morning? Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the commodities. Let me just bring over Thinkorswim. There we go. I was looking at transports this morning. Fast Money or options action on Friday mentioned they were looking at a bearish trade in IYT. I actually am thinking about selling call spreads rather than just take an outright play by puts on IYT transports. It does look like it's kind of it's had a really nice move here from the lows. Whether it continues to get over this region is what I'm looking at. Also an interesting candle on Friday. Let's see if this starts to turn the corner. I would be looking for a little bit of confirmation first, and then maybe selling some call spreads up higher in IYT, considering that nice move from the lows. So let's look at the number one commodity as we seem to be tracking crude. Crude just starting to get a bid here into the value area. If you notice, this happened a few times this morning. This big green line, actually the same line as value. So crude is moving higher here, up about 40 basis points. Let's see if it can hang in inside this value area. It tried to get in here a couple of times, got rejected, but it looks like now that we're getting closer to the U.S. stock market open, futures are getting into the value area. So one thing I wanted to note, it's one of the only charts you really needed to watch last week. A lot of that volatility that we saw, a lot of the movement up in the U.S. stock market happened right after oil went up. And I think this chart is pretty interesting. This is a chart of the S&P overlaid with the movement that's been going on in oil. And you can see, it's gotten out of lockstep here a little bit, but for the most part, the correlation is very, very high. You can look at last week. I mean, this is, verbatim. It's moving together. So just keep that in mind. It's what I'm looking for at some point is for these to decouple. Perhaps the fact that volatility in oil is starting to drop. I looked at this last week. You can look at the OVX on stock charts, $ OVX, and you can see it's starting to drop from when oil made lows. So let's see how much lower this can get. I think it's a good sign overall. Number one, if oil does go a little bit higher, but number two, if the correlation starts to drop between oil and equities. All right, so let's continue on here. Very interesting to see oil get a bid here, as it wasn't really doing much of anything in the overnight session. Nat gas down. Ooh, look at nat gas down another 5%. This always amazes me, the volatility here. And it looks like nat gas just took out the lows from December. So pretty interesting, something to keep an eye on here. Again, everybody's been kind of watching oil. Everybody's now watching gold. But look at nat gas take out those lows. Speaking of gold, let's move over to see what shiny metal is doing this morning. Again, the daily chart, had a pullback on Friday, but still kind of hanging in there. Be interesting to see how much more it's got to the upside. Take a look at the weekly chart. It is where it kind of paused is right at the top of value. So I would watch this. Let me just zoom in here to give the appropriate level. Looks like 1223 is the area. If you're a gold bull, you want to see the level stay above 1223 here in gold, and then we can possibly see a move higher, maybe to this Venom line up here, which is 1268. But nevertheless, on that weekly chart, I think that's an interesting level to watch. Let's take a look at copper. Kind of want to see what the weekly chart is, and then we'll kind of go in. We'll zoom in quicker, zoom into smaller time frames. Trending up here, it's about flat for the day, but again, kind of another area to watch. Here's the bottom of value. It's got a long way to go to get there, but if you were to draw a trend line here, it's kind of butting up that trend line right around the 20-period exponential moving average. This becomes a crucial area to see if this can continue to climb higher or if it's just rising up to the downward trend line. Let's now go all the way back to the 5-minute. Not much going on here. And then let's take a look at bonds. And I actually want to go out and take a look at the weekly chart in bonds. So here was your a little bit of, I wouldn't say this is a reversal candle, but so far it's kind of hanging in there just like gold is. So will be interesting again to see with bonds, kind of just hang in here or take the next move higher. Let's go back to futures. Let's see if futures are getting a lift. Yep, no doubt futures now into positive territory. Once again, following the move in crude here, but a nice move up here from the lows from about 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Right around 5 o'clock in the morning, a rise in futures, a little bit of a pullback. We're now into the value area. So this something to watch today, 1944. It looks like the level to watch on the 5-minute. Let's go over to the hour, see if we can find some more signals. On the hourly chart, again, this is this trend line that I've been, I'm going to have to extend this soon, but we've been going up along this trend line all along, since we pulled back here, since we broke the trend line, we've now been going right up against this. So I think I'm going to keep this line here as long as it stays valid, but it seems like the market wants to continue to grind up and follow this, this particular trend line that I have drawn. And then on the, going to the daily chart, looks like the top of value is right around 1946. So that is the level to watch to see if we can maintain above value. Interesting looking candle that came about on Friday, and we'll see what how it develops today. Let's go ahead and look at some single names this morning. So on the upgrade list, Campbell's raised to neutral versus sell at Goldman. I think that's a little bit late, considering that the move is happening in CPB. Take a look at this. It almost looks like a candidate that's run too far too fast, as some of these defense plays, some of these places that people are hiding in terms of defensive, higher yielding names, almost looks like it's you want to be fading this particular move. I believe that's what Options Actions, one of their trade was as well in their Friday show. DYB raised to buy. Not a lot of really big cap names coming out in terms of upgrades, downgrades. KREX raised to outperform. Dillard's cut to sell at Deutsche Bank. GM cut to hold. SanDisk cut to sector weight at Pacific Coast. Vivus cut to sector perform. Let's see if there's anything else. Swift rated new neutral. Nothing really to do there. SLCA rated new buy at Citi. Maybe a name to keep an eye on there. FCX new hold. Let's see. A lot of holds here. Nothing. Same thing with the upgrades and the downgrades. Nothing. Here's a strong buy. New NFX. Let's take a look at this chart. It was raised to a buy. Newfield Exploration. I think a name to watch in terms of some of these mining names that have been turning up the last couple of weeks. So new buy there. Let's go ahead and look at some of the other movers this morning. Let's see. Sun Edison up 7.5%. Groupon up 4.2%. Some of these names were already covered. Taser, they had earnings. Revenue beat. A name to watch there. VRX down 6.5%. Their CEO is going to return. We did see a big put spread go up in that name. Let's quickly look at the FANG stocks. They did very well last week. Netflix was the big winner after we saw a lot of call activity in that particular name. And then I'll leave you with one particular chart for the day. Netflix made this move up. Let's just see what, if anything is, it's a little early yet, but sometimes I like to see if anything's firing off a buy signal. A lot of rising momentum as futures go up here. But a little bit too soon to tell, I think, for some of these names. Netflix. Let's take a look at Apple. Apple may be a name to watch this morning. They do have their new product meeting that's coming up in a few weeks. I think they announced something about possibly a smaller iPhone. So new products is a good thing. So that's a name I'll be watching this morning. Let's just take a look at the daily chart and Apple. Doing not a lot of movement, a lot of sideways movement, a lot of basing. Let's see if this can start to grind higher here. So that is a name that I'll be watching today. Facebook on the daily has been grinding up here. Google, and then finally Amazon. So nice. All of these seem to be grinding up from the lows back in the beginning of February. Last chart I'll leave you guys with is not this one. We've seen this one. KRE is a name that I've been watching. It almost looks like, if you look at all the names that have kind of risen from the lows, the banks have not done so, and the banks are very challenged. I don't like them long term. However, for a trade, it almost looks like an inverse head and shoulders here in the regional bank ETF. Here's the neckline, which it's gotten to. I've been watching this all last week. So it did form this right shoulder, and now 35.89 seems to be the level of this particular neckline. A move above here, and we may be able to see a rally to the 50-day moving average. So that's what I'm watching. KRE, as well as possibly setting up for a day trade, is Apple today. All right, guys, have a great day, and I will see you later.